So how do avoidants even get into relationships when they avoid relationships? This was actually a really good question. So let's take a peek into the avoidance mind and understand what they're thinking as they go through this cycle. Well, avoidants do actually really want relationships and closeness and intimacy, but it's just that they get really stressed out and their nervous system can't handle it. So dismissive avoidants tend to see relationships in this kind of fairy tale way. They have this expectation that they're going to have this relationship that's easy breezy and there's no conflict and there's no expectations and there's no pressure and it's really easy on their nervous system. In the early stages of a relationship, this is pretty much what it feels like, right? You have all these neurotransmitters and hormones like dopamine making you feel really good because you're in that honeymoon stage. And also you haven't really started having conflict or expectations or pressure. So things are feeling that kind of easy breezy fairy tale like they've always wanted. During this stage, avoidants will sometimes feel like they hit the jackpot and that you must be the one because this is feeling the way that they want a relationship to feel. And this is where that love bombing that can happen with dismissive avoidance will come into play. Dismissive avoidants don't tend to self-reflect very much and they're kind of slow processors. So they don't really remember that this is how they felt in the last relationship at the beginning and the relationship before that, but they eventually got triggered. But they think, oh, well, this time it's going to be different, that with you, it's different. Inevitably, this honeymoon phase ends because it always ends. And then two things happen. One, the dopamine, all those feel-good hormones and neurotransmitters start to come down. And two, the relationship evolves and becomes like a healthy relationship where there are more expectations, there's more pressure, there's more conflict, all these things that make the dismissive avoidant feel pretty yucky inside. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Both partners will have a surge of feel-good hormones and neurotransmitters like dopamine in the early stages, but avoidants are actually clinically lower in something called oxytocin. Oxytocin is a bonding hormone. For most people, when that dopamine comes down from the honeymoon stage, yeah, you might not feel so elated, but you're still going to be bonding to that person because you have normal levels of oxytocin. But for the avoidant, when that dopamine comes down, it's harder for them to continue that feeling of bonding. At this point, the dopamine has come down, there's more pressure on the avoidant, and they're starting to feel really uncomfortable in this relationship. But they don't self-reflect, and because they have this defectiveness wound, like this feeling like there's something wrong with them, they just can't look inward. So what do? They externalize, and they start flaw finding and nitpicking on their partner in their mind. They'll start thinking, oh, well, she seems so perfect, so great at the beginning because they felt so good, but now they're starting to wonder maybe you're not as perfect for them as they thought. This pressure builds and builds until eventually they will usually cut you off, discard, or pull back intensely. After the breakup, and this is kind of harsh, but avoidants will go through a second honeymoon phase. Yes, they will get a surge of dopamine and feel-good hormones after the breakup because they're finally free, not from you specifically, but more just from the pressure that they were feeling inside the relationship. This can last a couple months after the breakup, and this kind of reinforces this feeling like, oh, well, they feel better out of the relationship, so maybe it wasn't as perfect as they thought, or maybe you weren't as perfect for them as they thought. A lot of times they'll go out, they'll go back on the dating apps, and they start dating again and just starting the cycle over again with somebody new, thinking that they're gonna find this perfect fairy tale where they never get triggered. Then, usually about 2.5, 3 months after the breakup, typically, the dopamine high from that second honeymoon phase starts to come down again. This is when they start to get a little bit nostalgic and they start thinking about the good times. Also, their nervous system isn't so triggered from the relationship anymore, and they've calmed down enough that their mind will allow them to start thinking of the good times. And this can be a time when you may get that breadcrumb text saying, hey, was just thinking about you, or I miss you, or something like that, 2.5, 3, 4 months after the breakup. So I want to know, do you relate to the stages that I've talked about in this video? Drop it in the comments and let us know. Hey, I'm Michelle. I'm a dating coach. I help women protect themselves in dating and find love safely.